honor your time at this time. Dr. Brakowski and I've known him for several years. I've heard him speak many times. Recently in Iowa at a convention, I heard him speak, and he was talking a lot about Ganoderma, and it kind of, I guess, inspired me a little bit, made me question a little bit. But one thing he said in his conversation was coffee was the number one thing that he moved in his functional medicine practice. And I thought that's interesting. And I just paused because I've never been a coffee consumer. And so I pulled him aside in between on a break and I asked him more information. So he sent me some information. He'll get into that in a little bit, but he's a well-known chiropractor, speaker, functional medicine doctor, and he practices in Houston, Texas, and about the same amount of years, I think 30 some years, Bob, right?
Yep.
So just sit back, enjoy the ride, write your questions down, put them in the chat box. He's gonna probably go about 30 minutes or so, somewhere around that range, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. I want you to get your questions answered tonight. I think you're gonna enjoy the conversation. So go ahead, it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you for the beautiful intro. One thing I always like to tell people is I could literally talk close to forever about health. It is absolutely my favorite topic. This is my 33rd year in clinical practice. I've worked with world champions from every major professional sport. I've also lectured on 6 of the 7 continents, not yet Antarctica, over 10,000 hours of education to doctors. I love to learn. I love to share. And beyond that, I love to empower people to better choices that can change their life now, literally better choices that can make a difference immediately. So some people hadn't heard of Ganoderma. Maybe they heard of Reishi. Maybe they heard of Lingxi. But I pulled this one graphic because it has 13 different summary benefits. And I don't know how you come up with only 13 because there's over 3,600 peer-reviewed medical studies. So I always tell people you probably have a hard time finding something that it doesn't have a direct benefit for. And if you understand physiology and you look at all the things that it's good for, it's probably good for every patient under literally any circumstance. So the number one is actually as an antioxidant. Oxidation is like rusting. It also is how our body ages. And if you take a look at this apple, half of it is oxidized, the other half isn't. And very, very simply, I'm going to put in a plug for organic. And very, very simply, if you're putting better quality food into your system, you're going to have a better quality life. 30% higher antioxidants in organic apples. And it's probably the same across the board for any organic food that you're going to put in your body. And the nutrient level is better. It's better for the environment. I'm going to put in a big plug. And all of our Ganoderma is USDA certified organic. All of our coffee is mold-free, pesticide-free, fungus-free. We also have organic, non-organic choices. The non-organic, though, are all certified clean. But you start looking at this, and as people age, their oxidation goes up, their function goes down, and then death basically approaches. So I happen to really like this reference here that makes the statement that, reishi has 10 times the amount of antioxidants by weight versus other things that they were tested against. And I find that beyond amazing. So it's one of the most antioxidant-rich foods on the planet. We're going to move into immunomodulation, which is kind of a big term. But I like this reference from Aging and Disease, and it says definite anti-aging properties. It wasn't in that list of 13, but they could control the diet and environment of mice very easily. And one group of mice got Ganoderma, the other group didn't. And those that got it lived 9 to 20% longer with everything else being equal. And they said that would equate to 9 to 16 extra human years. But when we start looking at our immune system, its first job is to protect us. It protects us from bad things that can come from the outside, and it protects us from bad things that can happen on the inside. Now, if there's too much attack on things from the outside, we're familiar with that. That's called an allergy. If there's too much defense on what's happening on the inside, that's called autoimmunity. And by the way, there's now over 100 named autoimmune diseases, likely many hundreds more. There's really not many that medicine is good at screening for. There's only a handful that they have antibodies for, but is collectively the number one cause of death in women under the age of 60 in the US. So you take all those together and add the causes of death. It's a very significant issue. Women get 80% of autoimmunity, men 20%. The reference, by the way, from the medical literature says Ganoderma can be used to treat and or prevent autoimmune disease. When there's too little defense from things from the outside, well, then we're going to get an infection. When there's too little defense on the inside, that's cancer. And it's estimated that somewhere around 99.9% of people, there's some rare animal that doesn't make cancer cells every day, but they actually estimate that the vast majority of us make 500 to 1,000 cancer cells a day. So we always want to be on guard to keep our immune system good and our body clean. So this is a fun story about immune modulation. This is Fire Captain Brian Figuera out of Toronto, Canada. He's a decorated hero, dove into a frozen lake before as a fireman and saved a drowning individual. But when he gets on a plane, he always tells the crew, he says, you know what, I've got flight experience, I've got emergency medical experience. If anything happens, let me know. So he had a trip with his beautiful wife, Francesca. It was a late night flight, and a flight attendant bumped him on the shoulder at about 2 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, we've got a problem. I'm wondering if you can help. And they had someone on the plane that was having a severe allergic reaction. Did not bring their EpiPen. So that could progress to something called anaphylaxis and death, and it's happening more and more often. And he said, all right, and he pulled out his King of Coffee, which has a very high dose of high power Ganoderma reishi in it. And he just gave her the powder and said, pour this in your mouth, wash it down with some cold water. Didn't want to make it super hot. And literally within moments, she started breathing easier. And if I were to go to the medical literature, it would use these exact words. Ganoderma lucidum dilates airways by more mechanisms than prescription inhalers. And it also was very, very good at stopping that anaphylactic progression. So they did not have to stop the plane. They didn't have to make an emergency landing. And the woman was just fine. When we start talking about antibacterial, there's so many different bacteria. Antibiotics have been overused for so long that this is one category of bug called MRSA. That's how they pronounce that, MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, that kills over 100,000 people every single year. And they're, even though they have a very powerful antibiotic, it doesn't work most of the time. So we've had cases of MRSA in my own clinical practice that we were able to get rid of just by using Ganoderma lucidum. When we start looking at brain health, I could teach full day seminars on that. And in fact, I have. In 2009, I taught a global series with a neurologist from Cornell. But I really love this book by Daniel Amen, and I love his principles. And he asked this question: what if mental health and brain health were one and the same? Well, they're not exactly the same, but they are definitely closely related. And these principles are timeless. The brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, and toxin vulnerable organ. And let's face it, most people don't have enough nutrition. In fact, some of the journals say that 99% of people walking around are deficient in one or more critical nutrients. Energy, fatigue is one of the top complaints in any doctor's office any given day. Stress, there was a 2021 study that said 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are in some way related to stress-induced illness. And then toxins are collectively responsible for 1/4 of the deaths on the planet. If we were to give an expanded lecture, Ganoderma has all of the nutrients. In fact, it's the most potent superfood on the planet with all the fabulous 50. We'll show you later that it enhances mitochondrial energy production. Mitochondria is where 94.4% of human energy is made. It buffers stress by multiple mechanisms, including lowering the amount of circulating stress hormone in bloodstream. And it's proven to detoxify some of the most horrific toxins in the history of the planet. So some different studies that I pulled up from PubMed, and I do that consistently because I teach doctors everywhere. And by the way, 3 times in my career, I've been hired as an expert witness. And all 3 times my cases won, defending natural cases. But the last case was a big money case. And the attorney said to me after she interviewed me for a few hours, she said, you seem to know a lot about the medical literature. I said, yeah, I've read at least 25,000 studies. She says, well, when they ask you a question, they'll usually ask it like this: doctor, in your opinion, and they'll ask the question, and here's how I want you to answer it. I'd rather not give you my opinion. I'd rather give you a published medical fact. And every time I'd cite a PubMed study. And we won that case easily, but it's a published medical study that Ganoderma is great for the brain. It's great for serotonin, our happy chemical, great for GABA, which is calming, great for acetylcholine, which is memory, great for dopamine, which is joy, focus, and even fine motor control. It even can induce new brain stem cells. It's anti-Parkinson's, anti-Alzheimer's, and anti-seizure, and powerfully. And we've gotten rid of seizures in some fun cases just with natural remedies. So this little boy had a very bad head injury. He had a seizure disorder. In this picture, he was 4.5 years old. He was with one of my associate doctor at the time, and his mother was very desperate. He was taking 3 different seizure meds. His liver enzymes were elevating, and his seizures weren't being controlled. We completely eradicated the seizures in 6 months, got him off of all medications, and that can be hard to do. And we did it with a Ganoderma infused hot chocolate, which is great for the brain, great for attention deficit. Gave him some very healthy shakes. Dr. Tony can help you with that if you're interested. And we even gave him some spore capsules, the most potent part of the mushroom that mom would sprinkle on his food. And the beautiful thing about that is it's absolutely tasteless. So number 5 is liver health. The first one that they mention is literally liver cancer, non-alcoholic liver disease, and alcoholic liver disease, hepatitis, inflammation, which is called hepatitis, fibrosis, and even toxic-induced liver injury. So very, very powerful for the liver. And this is a fun story. Emily Morrow was a young lady that I was referred to first on a phone consult. So one of my students, and again, I've got students all over the world, had my cell number. He literally called me on vacation. And he said, Dr. Bob, I've got a patient that's very, very desperate. I'm wondering if you could take a few moments and talk to her. His name's Dr. Ozzy. And I said, Ozzy, I'm on vacation. Is it really that important? And he said, Bob, it is. Just call her. So I called this young lady. At the time, she had 2 autoimmune issues, liver and thyroid. Her liver was declining so rapidly that they thought that she would need a liver transplant within a year or two. And we got her on a good protocol. And I don't know that I've ever seen a case that severe resolve that fast. She literally put her autoimmunity in complete and total remission in 30 days. It's still there. I think we're probably 7-8 years after that. But I tell people she was totally unknown. She was very challenged. She wouldn't put any pictures on social media because she was 30 pounds overweight and jaundiced. And then she's been telling her story ever since, and literally has been responsible for millions of dollars of reishi getting to people through healthy coffee and tea. So great job, Emily Morrow, and what a beautiful story. When we start looking at antiviral, I let people know that there are 10 quintillion viruses. Some of you may not be math majors and realize that there's a million, there's a billion, there's a trillion, there's a quadrillion, there's a quintillion. And so how much is a quintillion? It's a million billions. And we got 10 quintillion viruses out there. So now we go to Ganoderma, and it even has the capacity to block replication of the HIV virus. That's probably one of the worst viruses in the history of the planet. And then we start looking at this last COVID pandemic, very rock solid action against SARS-CoV-2. And this was a study that I often share. This actually came out March 15th of 2020, the International Journal of Biologic Science. It was a study out of China, and they took 2 groups of people. They were people that went to the hospital with COVID. One group just got traditional Western medicine, which is drugs. The other group still got the drugs. They also got traditional Chinese medicine, of which reishi is the top herb in all of Chinese medicine. And when you look with Western medicine, 180 out of 1,000 people would die, a total of 18% of what was going on. And then you look at with traditional Chinese medicine, only 6.5 of 1,000 died. So that was more than a 27x survival benefit just by adding herbs to the medical therapies. When we start looking at type 2 diabetes, lots of different things are contributing factors, but all the factors that are associated with it, Ganoderma makes better, and it's anti-diabetic by at least half a dozen different mechanisms. It protects the diabetic eye, the diabetic nerves, the diabetic blood vessels. And I've got some pretty profound cases of reversing, and I know it'll sound even hard to imagine, but gangrene, people that were sentenced to have a limb amputated. And we were actually able to save the limb. I've got 3 cases where I actually videoed the process. And how fun. This young lady just switched to reishi infused latte every day from her Starbucks and ended up losing 57 pounds in 10 months. I have a patient who, this is not a picture of her, but she's top 10 in the world in tennis for women over the age of 50. And she walked into my office carrying this huge mocha, with all this cream from Starbucks on it. And I looked at her and I said, "You've got to be kidding me. You're going to drink that." She says, "I know it's bad, but I'm addicted." And I said, "Well, would you like to try a healthier mocha?" She said, "Well, I'll try anything once." So I made her a mocha. I hadn't yet done the comparison between the two. I don't recommend, Starbucks mochas to anybody, but you compare them. We've got 1/3 the sugar, about half the calories, and we have a mega dose of Ganoderma. So that woman, the week of Thanksgiving, lost 4 pounds just by switching her coffee and getting those fat loss benefits. So very powerful there. When we start looking at gut health, 2000 years ago, Hippocrates said that basically, all disease can in some way be traced back to the gut. Well, modern science says it's not quite that high, but it is 90%. And I'll take a little interesting spin on this, but there's a lot of people that have bugs in their gut that are not doing them any favors. They call it the obese microbiome. And when I first read this study, I thought it was the strangest study I'd ever heard. They had started out with 2 identical human twins. One of these twins became obese and the other stayed lean, even though their diet and activity was very, very similar. So doctors thought, okay, this obese twin got a lot of antibiotics, was very, very sickly. Maybe it did something to his gut. So they did a fecal transplant. They took feces from the backside of the obese twin, put it in the backside of a mouse. They did the same thing with the lean twin into an identical twin mouse. And this is the actual picture. So the mouse on the exact same diet, the exact same quality, the exact same quantity, the exact same timing of food and diet became morbidly obese. And the mouse that got the good microbiome did not. Now, I'm not going to recommend a fecal transplant, although you could do that, if you were really desperate. They do that with patients that have very bad bugs in their gut, like Clostridium difficile. But here's a PubMed study that shows that Ganoderma actually reduces the obese microbiome. And most people walking around to some degree have a leaky gut that can progress to a leaky brain and a lot of other problems, but Ganoderma seals and heals the leaky gut. Additionally, with gut, nearly 80% of people that have challenges with coffee report that it irritates their gut. And our coffee, by the way, is actually alkaline. And so there's 2 different patented processes. 1, they make it alkaline, and 2, they infuse it with reishi, the most alkaline food on the planet. Anti-cancer, these are just some of the anti-cancer studies. There's well over 100 in PubMed. And we won't get into that in deep detail, but right now we have nearly half the states in the United States of America right now. Cancer has surpassed heart disease as the top cause of death. So I think it's prudent for all of us to be very diligent, literally about everything that we allow to enter our mind, our body, and our spirit. When it comes to lowering blood pressure, 3 different mechanisms. It even is good for an inherited stress-induced high blood pressure issue. It's what's called an angiotensin converting enzyme modulator. It's also really, really good for the parasympathetic nervous system. It also regulates something called nitric oxide, which won an award called Molecule of the Year. The Nobel Prize-winning research team that discovered it realized that a single dose of nitric oxide can dilate blood vessels as much as 60%. And then some of the other benefits of Ganoderma, very, very powerfully anti-inflammatory by 16 proven mechanisms, lowers the bad cholesterol, increases the good, very, very good for blood pressure, nitric oxide, and even prevents abnormal clotting, but without causing abnormal bleeding. And that's a very important thing. I literally had a patient in today whose father died from a simple fall because he was taking blood thinners. His brain bled out. And when the brain bleeds from a simple fall, the blood has nowhere to go. So it creates pressure in the skull and the brain herniates through the base. This man was only 60 years old. I wish I had gotten an opportunity to meet with him before or hear of him even before, because we could have done possibly a lot to prevent that unnecessary death. And I often tell people, if you were over 400 pounds, which is about the biggest patients I see, 2 cups a day of our black coffee will actually prevent clotting with the same efficacy as 9 baby aspirin. And by the way, that was in a peer-reviewed medical study. So if you take 9 baby aspirin a day, you're going to have a problem. Again, great for cholesterol, great for the heart, lowers the bad cholesterol, increases the good. This is as strong a note as I ever see in the peer-reviewed medical literature. It's from the International Journal Pharmacy, and I'll read it to you directly. Treatment for migraine through Ganoderma lucidum is very effective and may completely eradicate this condition with almost no side effects in the majority of patients who use it. So more than half the people that took this never had a migraine again with no other issues. So very, very powerful there. And here's what I'll tell you. If you use it longer and do a few other things and get some good adjustments, I can't think of the last headache patient that I wasn't able to make a very significant difference for. I don't completely eradicate in everybody all the time, but I think we're 100% at making people somewhat better. I think Dr. Tony's probably the same there. This term neurasthenia literally means mental and physical exhaustion. Ganoderma actually has a study showing that it's good for that. It's good for mitochondrial electron transport chains, which, by the way, addresses the fatigue component. Now we're going to get into pain and what's called post-herpetic neuralgia, and we'll wrap this part up and answer your questions. But this was what's called a double-blind placebo-controlled trial on Ganoderma versus drugs versus placebo. So they took people with severe rheumatoid. One group got Ganoderma, one group got a sugar pill, one group got the top drug, and Ganoderma beat the top drug for pain relief and actually nourished the body and detoxified the body rather than intoxicating the body. One pain condition that's very hard to manage is called fibromyalgia. This was a study, and I'll encourage people. I'm recording this, and I can send the recording to Dr. Tony. But look all these up. I always tell people, don't take my word for it. Don't take any doctor's word for it. Do your due diligence. Be a good steward of your own health. If you look up everything I tell you, you'll validate, as this is wonderfully safe, wonderful, effective across so many different things with no potential downside to it, no toxicity, no drug interaction. So post-herpetic neuralgia, that's basically shingles. There are over 200 strains of the herpes virus. This is the one that's associated with shingles, which, by the way, is the same one that causes chickenpox as kids. But notice that this created complete relief after 10 days with no recurrence at a year, whereas that was, the drug cases were never even close to that. 1 in 8 people kept their pain, and that was basically the recurrence was, 1 in 8 every single year. So interesting story. I had a police officer come to me over 10 years ago, and he good patient. He came in, he says, Bob, I got something I want to talk to you about. I'm getting married next month. I met the love of my life. He says, but I've got a serious problem. And I said, what's going on? He says, well, it's embarrassing, but I've got genital herpes. He says, my job is so high stress that I just have breakouts. I can't get over it. I take the antivirals. I'm in trouble. And I asked him, and I ask all my patients this, do you drink coffee or tea? Well, this guy was, singing my song because he drinks at least 9 cups a day. And I said, look, let's change out your coffee. Now, I started out with a complete protocol on him, different things like colostrum, omega-3s, vitamin C, zinc, quercetin, the things, and also I had him take Reishi capsules every waking hour for 10 days. He put the herpes in remission. And by the way, it's never come back. So this was actually a PubMed study where they actually showed that people that take Ganoderma get rid of their herpes a lot faster than the drug therapies, and it stays away. And this guy, the last time I saw him, so it was probably about a year ago, so 9 years after that event, he came in. I won't use his actual picture, obviously. But I said to him, I said, hey, I'm curious. You had a problem 10 years ago. He says, Bob, I haven't had a breakout since. I'm cured. Now, you can't completely eradicate a virus like herpes, but you can definitely keep it in control. And with his 9 cups of coffee a day, he's there. So a lot of other issues that Ganoderma Reishi helps with. But our goal, very, very simply, is to help all of you get the life you want. And this is one strategy to make health both easier and more delicious. So Some of you are shy and not having your camera on. Probably some of you are multitasking. I do that myself on occasion, but if you have a question to ask, please feel free to unmute or type it in the chat or however you want to share that. So, all right, I don't see anything in the chat just yet. If there are no questions, I might ask, what did you find most fascinating about this?
I have a couple of questions, doctor. And I
Sure.
know I talked to some patients even this today about some of these things, but
Yep.
one of the questions that I was brought up was I'm sensitive to mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people, there's a difference between the medicinal and the culinary mushrooms. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'd even created a video about it because, full disclosure, I'm an investor in this reishi infused coffee, and I love it. It's the top thing I move in my clinic because it's one. Nearly everybody drinks coffee or tea. They never need to be reminded. They never plan to quit, and ours is turbocharged. But sometimes people will come in and they'll say, "Well, I have a dairy allergy," and I'll ask them, "Okay, are you allergic to human's milk, or is it cow's milk, or is it goat's milk, or is it sheep milk, or is it killer whale milk, or is it camel milk?" And they chuckle and they say, "Well, cow's milk." I say, "Well, how about goat's milk?" "No, I'm okay with that." "How about human's milk?" "No, I'm okay with that." And very similar with mushrooms. They actually estimate that there's over 50,000 different mushrooms out there. And this, as an immune modulator, is the mushroom that actually reduces allergies. Now, is it possible you could be allergic to it? Of course, anything's possible. I think it would be very, very rare. But, in my own home, my wife and son both had seasonal allergies. I can't say my own home now because my son's grown and is blessed me with 3 beautiful granddaughters. And congratulations to you too, Dr. Tony. We're both celebrating. Mine was born on the 23rd of May, and yours just the other day. So God bless her and mom and dad and your whole family. But they had severe seasonal allergies and they had severe cat allergies. Now they can go out without issue, and you can even put a cat in their face and it's not there anymore. So that property as an immune modulator, you're not going to get rid of your allergies tomorrow. You might not even get rid of them next month. But if you're consistent with this, they're going to calm down and in many cases completely go away. And the same thing is true of autoimmunity. And again, we've got so many different testimonials, but here's what I'll tell you. We live in an interesting world. There definitely is an attack on health, health care, and healthy habits. So even though there's 3,500 published medical studies, we can't make a health claim. Interestingly enough, we can only point back to the peer-reviewed literature. And here's what I tell people. Part of your due diligence is give this a clinical trial. Switch out your coffee for 1 month. And for people that have done that, I've never seen anybody, 12 years of doing this, I've never seen anybody switch back. They love how it is on their gut. They love that they get smooth energy. And Tony was telling me about someone that had one the other day that, they said, "I don't know what's in that, but, something feels wonderfully unique and good in my body." Tony, by chance, is this person with us? Would they care to share that? Or do you want to tell about that a bit?
Yeah. Tracy, do you want to unmute and say something? She's probably chatting more than.
Okay, I just see a light came on. No, a camera came on, but it's not Tracy, unless someone else has a different name.
No, she's not. She's not. She's shy and being bashful about it, I think. But yeah, she had told me and on the 101, like the first time she had drank the hot chocolate, she just felt this sensation over her body. And she's not a coffee lover, but she took a mocha also, and the next day tried it and had the same experience. So one of the questions I think brought up is how soon can you see an effect of taking or drinking the coffee or taking the spore? And I have obviously several more questions for you, but is that something that you can answer directly?
Oh
Is
yeah,
it
of
variable
course.
for everybody?
Yep. So, about 1 in 10 people have that experience like Tracy. Their first cup is magic. And, we always love when that happens. If you give someone an adjustment, it's the adjustment of their life. And it changed my life. By the way, my first adjustment, my chiropractor, it changed my life forever. I was in engineering school. I did finish that degree. But my dad always said, "Hey, son, you should become a doctor." And I said, "Dad, why would I become a doctor? I never had a doctor visit that I liked." It wasn't that I didn't like the doctor, but I didn't like the visit. This was all different. I went in hurt, maimed, nearly died from, taking pain meds and going out on a date and having one drink and falling asleep behind the wheel of my car. I literally got home and flushed the pills down from a sports injury. And when I was referred to a chiropractor, I went in to see him, and he literally helped my neck so fast. I tell people it would make your head spin in a good way, right? I mean, literally, he helped me so much. I looked at him, I said, why didn't my other doctor tell me about this? And he says, well, we're trained differently. What else can you help with? He says, you know what? The power that made the body can heal the body. He's one of those really good philosophical guys. He says, you know what? I'm not going to rule out helping anything. We can't help everything, but you know what? I think we can help everyone. And that's still true today. And that's true of reishi. It's not going to help everything, but it's going to be good for everyone. And 1 in 10 will see a big difference. One of my favorites is, I treat a lot of elites. I didn't treat Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao became a global ambassador. He's won boxing championships in 10 weight divisions. And someone offered him a cup of our coffee, and he said, I don't drink coffee. It makes my heart race. And he said, the person said this. He said, look, this one won't. I would never say that as a doctor. I'd say, look, it's got something that's great for the heart. It's alkaline. It's anti-inflammatory. It's calming to the nervous system. It's great for nitric oxide. There's a very good probability you'll actually get better on this. But anyways, he took one sip and he was waiting for his heart to race. Took another sip, still waiting for his heart to race, felt great, drank the whole cup, had a second, had a third, had a workout of a lifetime. He says, oh my God, how do I get more of this? And he literally became a global ambassador for it. So very, very powerful there. Dr. Tony, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. You want me to address those first, or you want to go?
Before you do that, though, as far as that is one of the concerns people have had, like caffeine, like if they're sensitive to caffeine.
Yep.
And I haven't noticed any that's been an issue with people. And is that because of the reishi in there that balances that? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we like to call it smooth energy, and it buffers the effect of the caffeine straight up. I'm going to say that about 1 in 10 people that are caffeine sensitive, we start them out on a couple of days of capsules. They do 3 capsules 3 times a day, and then they start gentle. They start with a sip, make sure they're good, 2, 3, 4, 5, and usually by the end of a week of capsules, everybody. I can only think of one person in 12 years that was caffeine sensitive that after that, doing that for a week, still said they were caffeine sensitive. So it's pretty effective. So
starting at 3 capsules 3 times, or 3 capsules 3 times a day.
Yeah, that I like the spores because those are strongest. But here's what I'll tell you. Again, it's only 1 in 10 that's caffeine sensitive that doesn't immediately respond just to our coffee as is.
Okay, so if the layperson, and I know there's a lot of people with a lot of different stuff going on this conversation tonight, and I kind of reference it as a superfood, like
Yep.
it's one of those things that can help like everything, right? And I know there's no such thing as a magic pill, but this is probably as close as we get to it. And then what would be a typical dose for just someone starting to begin with?
Replace your coffee and tea. The average coffee drinker in the U.S. drinks 3.3 cups a day. Heck, my family was such big coffee drinkers. I drink 6 a day, and I have for 45 years at this point. And I love it, and now they've associated coffee with longevity. It's America's #1 source of antioxidants. But here's what I want to tell you. There's a lot of coffees out there that are moldy. There's a lot of coffees out there that have a lot of herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. And when you start looking at the coffee conglomerates, I'm happy that Starbucks is becoming more ethical in their sourcing, but all of ours is ethically sourced. It's all certified clean. All of our Ganoderma reishi is USDA certified organic. And even though ours, we have some that's not certified organic, it creates a different price point, but it's always certified clean. And I'm going to encourage people, be very diligent, literally about everything that you allow to enter your body, your mind, and your spirit.
Well, that was one of the big things that you said to me that I thought really hit me between the eyes, is like, you're helping all these people with wellness, and then they're going out and buying Starbucks and McDonald's coffee, and it's not really helping them and their help them on this journey. And I think when we get that, so I have a couple more things about that I kind of want to follow up, and then I'll let you go to the chat. You talked a little bit about diabetes, and I know well, you and I probably know about type 3 diabetes now. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that with brain function? Because there are a lot of people struggling with fog and dementia and starting to lose that cognition ability.
Sure. So one, I'm going to be a little more expansive than just that because it's so critical. Diabetes is emerging as the top killer. It's certainly the most expensive problem in the sick care system. But type 1 diabetes is autoimmune. And remember, Ganoderma can be used to treat and or prevent autoimmune disease. I've had doctors that really should have taken this home and given to their kids. I can think of two of them that are my students that had children that had an onset of type 1 diabetes. And I can't say for sure if they were drinking Ganoderma hot chocolate, if it would have been avoided, but it's in the peer-reviewed medical literature. They have studies on it avoiding type 1 diabetes in susceptible animals that are given toxins and infections. So it's very powerful there. Type 2, you earn type 2 diabetes with bad choices, not eating right, not exercising, overstressing, not getting good sleep. But there's half a dozen mechanisms by which Ganoderma reishi lowers blood sugar and even revitalizes the cells of the pancreas to make insulin. But a few decades ago, they started calling Alzheimer's a type 3 diabetes of the brain. And what was so interesting was they figured it out by accident. They give people insulin injections and start regulating their blood sugar better. And suddenly their memory would come back for a few moments. They even started then spraying insulin in the nose. And they came to realize, wait a minute, the brain is very, very insulin dependent. And they would get their memory back for a period of time. We have a lot of cases of diabetes that we reversed. I'm near 100% in all my type 2 cases. I'm hopeful one day that we'll turn around a type 1 case. There's one that exists in the medical literature, and when there's one, there'll be more. But we have plenty of cases where people got their memory back. And there's a book actually called The End of Alzheimer's. I co-lectured with the author, Dr. Dale Bredesen, about 8 years ago at a major conference. And basically, here's what he said. He said, whenever there's a problem with any organ system, there are 3 distinct zones of cells. There are cells that are dead. There's nothing we can do about that. There's cells that are fine. There's nothing we need to do about that. But in between are cells that are functional but not functioning. And if we get function back, well, guess what? We get function back. And so we have plenty of cases where people started getting memory back because they did all of the right things. And even a few cases where it was actually reishi that was the tipping point. I'm going to share a screen in a moment with one of my favorite cases of all time, because they used to say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But now that they've actually done brain mapping, they know that a picture is worth 2 million words. And this is a patient that had wrong share. Sorry about that. Stop share. New share. Share screen. There it is. So why is that doing that to me? Tony, are you seeing my my
It says
famous
Rob
foot?
Kelsey started screen. There it is.
Okay, there we go. So this woman was literally, that foot was given a death sentence. I tell people she was scheduled to have that foot amputated 2 days from the day that picture was taken and from her first visit with me. And this was 2 weeks later. And I tell people that bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. So with a limb on the line or a life on the line, we don't just do one thing. I mean, I certainly adjusted her. I changed all of her nutrition. I dotted every I, crossed every T, gave her everything I knew that was good for blood sugar, including exercise, stress management, chromium, vanadium, cinnamon, omega-3s, all the things that make a difference. And then look at that foot 17 months later. So if we were to go to Alzheimer's for a moment, if this were the center of her brain, which, stores memory, called the hippocampus, here she might not remember her spouse's name, her kid's name, maybe even not her own name. Now here, she knows all that. She knows where she lives. She can remember where she put her keys. She can even find her way to places and home. And here, the only thing missing is a few childhood memories. So what I like to tell people is we're only starting to scratch the surface of what's possible. If we give people the right protocol, miracles can happen. And we're blessed to see them and fortunately be a part of them on occasion.
Okay, I'm going to let you answer the chat, and then I have a few more questions.
Okay. There was a question about warts. Can it help with warts? Definitely. Most warts are viral. Can we change the tissue and get it completely to go away? Sometimes, not all the time. I had a patient and she was getting married and she had a wart on her butt and she says, this is so embarrassing. I don't like needles. I don't like pain. I don't want to go to the doctor. And I gave her coconut oil and reishi capsules. And I said, look, put this on, change it out frequently, 3, 4, 5 times a day, put fresh coconut oil. That wart was gone in about 2 weeks. So she was thrilled about that. And remember that warts are viral. Does it help with cold sores? That's again viral. That's typically a herpes virus. And yeah, it's effective against herpes virus and possibly all 200 strains. So herpes zoster is shingles. The herpes for fevers, blisters is a different form. Even Epstein-Barr is a herpes virus. How many spore capsules can you safely take a day? The answer is I don't know. There's no known toxicity. They don't do human studies, but they dosed a dog, 100-pound dog, with 4,000, the equivalent of 4,000 capsules a day for weeks on end without toxicity. And that's in one of the veterinary journals. I can give you the study if you want, but I often have people take 2 spores every waking hour when they want to get well fast. That's what I did with Maureen with the foot. That's what I did with the police officer with genital herpes. And I again, when people want fast change, we want to get them better fast. And that's the best way I know to do it. Can you get the recording? You bet. You bet. I will send it to Dr. Tony. I might even load it up on YouTube. The interesting thing about YouTube, I don't think I made any health claims, but sadly, and even it's a badge of honor, I'm one of the most censored guys you'll ever see. They shut down my YouTube channel. They shut down my Facebook. All I did was say stuff like, look, you don't have to get this virus. You don't have to worry about it. Healthy bodies don't get sick, which is why I've been teaching people for years. I'm fortunate I still have a social media account, but you might have a real hard time finding me. Ganoderma is the real deal, but keep in mind, there's Ganoderma and there's Ganoderma, right? So most of the Ganoderma that's out there is grown in plastic bags. They can call it organic because they don't use herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. If you actually look at it, it looks very pale as according to that royal red reishi that it's known for. So you want to get the highest quality. And the good news is connected with Dr. Tony, you can do that. What can kids take? 16-year-old with Crohn's. You know what? We've got great records with Crohn's. I think I'll put in the chat an autoimmune, they censored my autoimmune video. I have a gut health video, and I probably haven't asked the doctor about autoimmune, and I'm going to put that in the chat. Let me just see if this one was censored. It's almost sad to say that. All right, that one's there. So I'm going to share that. Copy link. And I'm going to put that in the chat. And then I'm going to put a gut health video in the chat. But I'll tell you about Crohn's. In 32 years now, I have not had a Crohn's case that I hadn't helped dramatically. And in most cases, they are medication free. And some very, very fast. So I have a gut health mini course, and I always tell people that we can solve most gut problems by answering 5 questions. And by the way, the gastroenterologists often don't ask these questions. Number 1, what are you eating? Number 2, how's your digestion? Number 3, what kind of bugs live in your gut? Number 4, do you have a leaky gut? Number 5, how often do you poop? And if we get those things working, most gut things, and I'm talking including Crohn's, because it's usually triggered by food reaction and bad bugs in the gut and high stress and things like that, we can make that go away. So I sent you both those videos. I certainly wish a very speedy and full resolution for your son. So let's see what else we have here. And a 17-year-old with warts. Okay, yeah, that's the virus. Wondering if it could help them. Well, we won't know till we try. You know what? I've taught doctors around the world for decades at this point. People always ask, can you help? I always say, I don't know, but I'll try. And by the way, I'm not just going to try. I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. And I think that's why Dr. Tony and I connect so effectively, because we value the same things. I'm not a coffee or tea drinker. I could barely get down the mocha. I added chocolate syrup. Why is the hot cocoa more expensive? I would rather have that. You can have the hot cocoa. So here's a fascinating thing. The company was very, very brilliant. And I'm an advisor for him. So I don't want to claim credit because they got this in place before I was there. But when they have anything with sugar in it, they add a lot more of the reishi. So the highest amount of reishi you're going to get is in the cocoa. The second highest is in the mocha. And I've even had, and I'll tell this story. There's a practice management guru named Sachin Patel. And he was giving a seminar to healthcare providers. He said, Dr. Bob, I see the value of this. Would you come and give a talk about functional medicine in a cup? I said, sure. So he says, Bob, we're going to throw you a little curveball. I'm going to get a volunteer from the audience. And let me tell you what I want the volunteer to do. We're going to put a continuous blood glucose monitor on, and we're going to have you drink a mocha. And we're going to see what happens to your blood sugar over the course of the next 2 hours. Well, it wasn't a typical person. This was a 35-year-old healthy, fit male. But in 2 hours, his blood sugar didn't even go up a point. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I like that. So I figured, okay, it's going to be good for some people. Well, I have samples in my waiting area, and a patient came in that was diabetic, and he was making himself a mocha. And I looked at him, I said, you can't have that. He said, yes, I can. I said, look, I'm your doctor. I'm telling you, you can't have that. He says, look, I checked it with my blood sugar. He says, it raises my blood sugar about the same amount as broccoli and chicken. I said, I don't believe you. He says, test me. So I pricked his finger, measured his, got his glucose there. He had his mocha, came back for his treatment, was in the office, hung out for a little bit. I think total time, somewhere around 40 minutes. Tested his sugar again. It barely went up. I said, okay, I guess you can have it. So pretty powerful there. Let's see. Might be a weird question. Those are my favorites. But if I take it, would it show up on a drug test? No. My Olympians take it. My NBA, my NFL, my Major League Basketball. No, they all take it. I could bring back the picture of me and Yao Ming, which is, I have so many funny stories from clinical practice. But literally, I had to sell Rockets management on his protocol. And one of the things they said to me was, they said, if our guy flunks a drug test, you will never practice again. And, the shortest guy in the room besides me was 6'8". And I looked at him and I said, you know what? I says, if your guy flunks a drug test, I promise you, it's not from anything that I'm giving him. So am I able to show that? Where is that going? Just trying to bring up that fun picture. I hope I didn't cut out of the Zoom. Are you still there?
We're still here.
That's weird. I can't get that back. I'll find a way. All right. Now, sometimes technology is our friend. Sometimes it's our challenge. But let's go with that one. Remember, a picture's worth 2 million words. So
the answer to the hot chocolate is it's got more reishi in it. That's thus far it's more expensive.
Oh, it's got a lot, not just the reishi, but because it's pure, because it's clean, because of all the things they do, really all of our products are more expensive, even though they're cost competitive, because, they certify the purity and other things going on. I'm going to call it more expensive, but worth it.
Right. That little guy was Yao Ming, who is a professional NBA player. How tall is he?
7'6".
So big fella. All right, you got a couple more questions on there.
All right. Info on dementia, please, video. Yeah, we can certainly send that. And I'll send in, I've got a whole series called Demolishing Diabetes, and I will put that in the chat right now. And it includes type 1, type 2, and type 3. And what's interesting about this, I'm wondering if one of these was censored. So it's possible that one of these links might not be active anymore. I get, unfortunately, YouTube will go over stuff I put on years ago, and they'll send me a message. Sorry, this violated community standards. They throw out this medical misinformation, even though I have PubMeds on it. I shouldn't rant. It's very sad what's happening. We all need to stand up for health. That's for sure. And I trust that most people on this call are probably seeing that that is accurate. So brain health mini course, and I include dementia in this one as well. So let's put that in there. Now that one's taking a little while. Is that going to post or no? Copy that again. Copy.
Oh, it's on there.
Okay, you got it now? Okay.
Type 1, type, yep.
Oh yeah, no, the brain one was slow to get there. So the last one is the brain health one.
Okay.
And let's see. I have sensitivities to black tea and seem to react to all herbal tea. Also, should I go ahead and try the tea sparingly as you recommend it for those with caffeine? Yeah. So our red tea and our green tea have very minimal caffeine. They actually do have traces. They have a megadose of Ganoderma. And by the way, the red tea also has cordyceps. So there's a guy named, which is phenomenal for athletes. There's a guy named Eliud Kipchoge who ran the first sub 2 hour marathon. It's not official because he had pace setters and other things going on like that, but he drank our red tea. Now we don't pay for endorsements, so he didn't endorse us. He said he drank Gatorade, which he did. He did not drink Gatorade, but he drank our red tea through all of his training and through his run. So very, very powerful. Okay, hot cocoa, you got it. You know, the hot cocoa, certainly the good for adults. You try it at bedtime. If anybody has challenges with sleep, that hot cocoa with that megadose is magic, absolutely magic. But it was originally formulated for kids with ADHD. And so I have a chiropractor friend, and he's in Rochester, so where the Mayo Clinic is. And he had these two twin girls. They were 9 years old, and they had very significant attention deficit, and they were given the standard drugs. And the kids didn't like the drugs, and the parents didn't like the drugs. So their chiropractor said, you know what? We actually can do a very interesting trial. Why don't you take one of the girls, and instead of giving her Adderall, give her a hot cocoa? And anyways, at the end of that week, they had a parent teacher conference, and the teacher said, you know what, I don't know what you do with Sally. That was the one that got the cocoa, but she's a different child. She's so interactive. She seems to be loving school, and she's a different person. And they realized, wow, the cocoa did that in a week. So they got both of them on it. And now I'm not making a health claim. I'm not telling you to replace a medication with a cocoa. I am going to tell you, if you're prescribed a medication, consult your doctor. Those are all the legal things I need to say. But, if you were to ask me, I'd say, make sure your doctor knows about nutrition, and then even ask them, tell me how much you've studied this and how much of that is part of your clinical practice. There's a few out there, but not enough, not enough. We're hoping to change that.
There was one up in the chat a little bit about a husband diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. How often should they drink the hot cocoa or hot chocolate?
Check your blood sugar, because both those have sugar, right? We want to make sure it doesn't spike, but as much as you want. Since I tell people that bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli, my favorite jumpstart is 2 capsules of the spore capsules, the most potent part of the mushroom, every waking hour. Now, that might seem like a lot, but if you drop someone's blood sugar 30, 40, 50 points, you've extended their longevity. Sometimes we drop their blood pressure. I do everything I can to help people as fast as I can. So I'll tell a story. I had a guy come in, and pre-pandemic, I had helped him with diabetes and blood pressure. And I mean, this guy turned his life around. And all of a sudden I saw him like 1.5 years after pandemic. He was 75 pounds heavier. He was taking half a dozen drugs, 3 different blood pressure, 3 for diabetes. And he says, I'm miserable. I want to get back to what I did. So I put him on a full protocol, including 2 of the spore capsules every waking hour. Now, this will sound like a bad story, and there's a bad component to it. He came in for his test, and I did a blood draw because I do labs, and I also have an in-office lab for certain tests with Clio wave devices. And anyways, after I took his blood and I took it to the centrifuge to spin, I came back in the room and the guy was out cold. He was absolutely unconscious, laying in a puddle of his sweat, like basically unrevivable. And I called 911, which I've done 4 times now from my clinic, 4 times. And he woke up by the time he got there, but I didn't take his blood pressure before I did his blood draw. He was in the habit of taking his blood pressure every morning, and he was still taking his blood pressure pills. That morning, he woke up with a pressure of 90/60, and from habit, still took 3 blood pressure medications. So they knocked him out. And, they gave him IV fluids and they said, just process this out, go back to your doctor. You probably don't need those anymore. And reality is he didn't need any of the medications anymore. In just 10 days, we had normalized the blood pressure. I think we took off 20 pounds. Now, it wasn't all fat. A lot of it was fluid. He was so swollen. I do something called bioimpedance. I think it was 16 pounds of fluid, if you can imagine that. He had, ankle rings around from his socks. He couldn't put his rings on. He had to expand his watch. Horrible. So sometimes we can get some amazing responses, but we do it, remember, with frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli, and add in all the variables if you want to get better fast, certainly including visits with Dr. Tony.
Yeah, and I know a couple people asked about thyroid, but I think thyroid as any endocrine issue ties in with almost everything we've talked about tonight. So
Yep.
If you want to piggyback on that at all.
Yep. So there are some thyroid very specific studies. The most common cause of thyroid, believe it or not, is autoimmunity. It's called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. In the medical literature, they call the thyroid the most environmentally sensitive organ, meaning it's more vulnerable to stress and toxins and malnutrition and lack of physical activity. Gluten sensitivity is a problem. Chronic viral infections is a problem. Different medications can be problems for thyroid. Iodine deficiency can be a problem for thyroid. I've got a thyroid mini course that I'll put in the chat. And yeah, there's absolute data that Ganoderma, especially for the autoimmune component of thyroid, is exceptionally good. But I'll even go further and say that whatever the cause, it has a possibility of helping the patient. And we don't help every thyroid patient, but I have a whole bunch that, we're told, look, you're going to need thyroid medication for life. And we've been able to get them off of meds and very well regulated, which is good, healthy choices.
I know we can't make health claims, guys, but I think it's understandable with Dr. Bukowski's knowledge and understanding of what he does, how valuable, and he's been using this product for 12 years, I think you said, is that right?
Yep.
10.
Well, you know what? I've used Reishi in clinical practice for all 33 years. I'll tell a fun story. So, and I don't want to get too long-winded because I love to talk and I love to share, but I was on a mission. When I was in school, my first degree was electrical engineering. I graduated second in my class. I never felt like a good engineer. And when I finally said, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm going to go back and be a chiropractor. I asked my chiropractor, I said, how can I be a good chiropractor? I want to be a good one. He says, that's simple. Learn from good chiropractors. I said, perfect. That's what I'm going to school for. He says, Bob, here's the downside. He says, I hate to tell you, but most of your instructors probably have never been in clinical practice or did not succeed in clinical practice. And God bless them for being there. I'm glad they're there. But he said, go out and talk to the community and find out who's good. So I visited every single chiropractor that would let me. And I said, if you could teach me one thing, what would you teach me? You know what? And imagine you had 200 high performers teaching you their secret sauce. I promise you, you'd be better in whatever field you wanted to be. But one of them gifted me a book that was entitled Reishi, the King of Herbs. And he said, Bob, listen, chiropractic adjustments are magic. I wouldn't go, I wouldn't go without them. And I don't recommend that people go without them. But I'll tell you what, people are very malnourished. I love this. And I see it helping so many patients find ways to give it to them. So, I used it in tinctures, which tasted horrible. I used it in capsules, which was inconvenient. And then when I was, exposed to reishi infused coffee, Ganoderma coffee, I thought that can't be good. And then I had a sip and I thought, wait a minute, this is good coffee. How is this possible? And again, I've had 6 a day, every day for 12 years. Some days I have more. Like when I travel to Australia, I might have 15 the first day. I know that sounds extreme for some of you. If I ever tried to have 15 Starbucks, forget it. My gut would have burned. I would have had a headache. There's no way I would have been able to go to sleep. But with this, it's not a cure for jet lag, but it makes it easier than ever. And the nice thing is your body will tell you. If you learn how to listen to your body, that's probably the number one thing I said, teach people to listen to their body and then they'll never go wrong. It's a hard thing to learn though, but pay attention. See, if you drink our coffee for a week and then you drink another one, I'll refund every penny if you don't see a big difference. I mean, it's just that simple. It is that magic.
You haven't quite started doing that in practice yet. I would just say that last week to me, all the years you've done it, you've never had somebody come back and say, I want my money back. So I two things I really want to touch on. I want to say to you all that follow my lead and are under our practice on a day-to-day basis. I only know what I know. So as I know, you know, or you become knowledgeable on what I learn. And when I hear things like this and make friends like this, obviously it's in your benefit for us to create partnerships and create health and well-being in our future endeavors. So I want to say that, number one. Number two, I do have people, I believe, that are also drinking some of our coffee, the organo coffee, plus their old coffee. What would you say to that?
Well, ours is a better choice. Sometimes people are slow to change. I was so in love with Starbucks, and there's one 300 feet from my office, or probably 500 feet from my office. So it's pretty close. And I was going in there so often. And I'll tell you this, this will sound ridiculous. I would spend $500 a month at Starbucks. Now, it wasn't all on myself. When I go get Starbucks, I'd have a waiting room full of patients that said, coffee run, who wants coffee? About everybody raised their hand, and my wife would get mad at me. She said, you spend so recklessly. I said, I love my patients. I love my coffee. I think it makes the visit better, Well, guess what? Now we got healthier coffee. We literally have people stop in for a cup. And if you have a business, I don't know if you have a business that has walk-in traffic, if you have coffee available, it makes their wait more effective, more pleasant. That's for sure. And sometimes they just stop in for that. And when they do, they say, hey, any chance Dr. Bob could see me today, or I might need some nutrients or whatever. Right. So it's a good adjunct, I would suggest, for any business.
Yeah, great. And I want to just kind of wrap with a couple of things. One, saying that there are a lot of Ganoderma products out there. I hope you took from this conversation, they are not all created equal. So it's again how they're grown, how they're harvested and encapsulated, etc., the benefit. If you can't change anything else, number two, change your coffee. I learned this from him. I think you said about 80% of the population drinks coffee. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I never was a coffee drinker. I tried, like, when I reached adulthood, to drink coffee, and it just wrecked my digestion. And I just stayed away from it. So I've done caffeine through other sources of clean energy support, et cetera, going forward. And I don't have a problem with caffeine. I mean, I could literally drink it most of the day. And I was talking to Dr. Bob's wife, Kelly, and I had told her that. And she goes, well, I was the same way. I wasn't a coffee drinker. I do drink it now. So I have tried most all of these beverages, including the green and red tea now, and I have enjoyed every one of them. And I have not had any digestive issues with them. Now, I'm probably healthier now than I was 25 to 30 years ago, just from my lifestyle choices. But again, everything we can do to help support health and wellness. For example, if we do all the great supplements, remember, you can supplement everything, but at the same point, if you're not changing what's on your fork, you're not getting hydrated, you're not getting your rest, you're not stress reducing. Everything we talk about wellness, remember, total well-being is physical, chemical, emotional, spiritual. It's not just the physical. This is one of those things that just enhances your physical being. Remember, this is your one rodeo. This is your one chance. God has purpose and plan for your life right now at this very moment. And we want you to have your best experience while you're here. So if you don't change anything, change your beverage. If you want more, as far as support, I would recommend the spores from Organo. And doing, like he said, if you're sick and you're struggling with something that's just not going away, maybe one or two every waking hour. For what, 3 weeks, Bob?
Well, that's a long stretch. Usually 7 to 10 days will get them going. My parents are now 83 years old. They're still best friends, have been married 64 years. How wonderful. They both got COVID. Now understand that my sisters are in medicine, so they were wanting them to get the shot and other stuff. My parents, they didn't resonate with that. They didn't get the shots. They got over COVID, both of them, at 83 in 5 days. And this was, a big part of their protocol. It wasn't the only thing I did. I did colostrum, vitamin C, quercetin, vitamin D, zinc, but 5 days at 83. And my mother has a little bit of COPD, which stands for, by the way, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, emphysema. Unfortunately, she smoked in her early life. and pays the price for it. Her oxygen never dropped below 92. I sent her a pulse ox as well. And she typically runs 94, 95. So, you know, this is proven over time. It's got over 5,000 years of human clinical use. So, yeah, every waking hour is the fastest way to make change.
And once you achieve those health goals, what would be like a prophylaxis support long term as far as spores?
Drink your coffee or tea. You probably don't even need the capsules. You know, some people want that extra boost. If they want it, go ahead and do it. And I hope you're all in the habit of, you know, daily taking a few things because our food is very, very weak. So we do need to supplement, no doubt about that. And spores are on my rung, right? Ganoderma on my rung of superfoods of things that people should consume consistently. So coffee, tea, and or capsules, good way to get it.
That's awesome. We really appreciate your time and energy put into this tonight. And I know everybody, all the comments I'm getting, even my texts back, great information. So it's been a blessing to have you on our Zoom call tonight. Is there any other final messages or any other questions before we let Bob go tonight? All right. Do you want to wrap it up, sir?
Yeah, I always wrap it up with the same words. If you've ever seen me on Facebook Live, I just wrap it up with this. I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So to this crowd, I think I'm very safe to say good night and God bless.
Thank you. And reach out to me if you have any other questions as far as you all on my cell phone, etc. But appreciate your time tonight. God bless you all. Have a great evening. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next Zoom call. As far as otherwise, we'll be in person next week in the practice. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.